This is January 13th, 1988. And this is Joe Todd, an interview with Mr. Lyle Jasmin in Joplin, Missouri. Where were you born?
I was born in Boyne City, Michigan, Charlevoix County, on 05, 07, 09.
05, 07, 09.
That's right.
Who was your father?
My father was Charles Napoleon Jasmin.
And your mother?
My mother was Nellie Naomi Conley was her maiden name.
Conley?
Right.
Okay. What type of work did your father do?
My father first worked as a riverman in the lumber industry in Michigan around 1905. And then he got a job as a machinist apprentice in the railroad yards. And at the time I was born, he was an engineer on what the natives call the BCG&A. That's the Boyne City, Gaylord, and Alpena Narrow Gauge Railroad. And along about 1920, we moved south to the central part of Michigan, where he was one of the best early automobile mechanics in the state. And I went to school in Clare, and my mother died when I was 14. And I joined the Navy at the beginning of the Big Depression. I had worked 4 years for Hudson Motor Car in the machine shop, but I hadn't taken any upgrading courses, so I was just a machine operator.
Why'd you join the Navy?
I joined the Navy because there was no work anywhere. And in 1930, the latter part of 30, I went to Great Lakes and I took the examination with I took the examination with 1,200 other sailors to go to the machinist school. They were only accepting 17. I was one of the 17. Even though I only had an 8th grade education, I was the first one that had 100% in the mechanical aptitude. So they sent me down there. I was there almost a year. I graduated in the fall of 1930. While I was there going to school, I volunteered for shore patrol, and I walked shore patrol in Norfolk for 10 months. I put in for the Battleship Oklahoma, and I was sent to San Pedro down. We went to Panama Canal.
Why the Oklahoma? Why'd you request the Oklahoma?
I knew nothing about the Navy, and I requested the Oklahoma because I had made up my mind I was going to request whatever the man ahead of me put in for. So later on, when we were aboard ship, I asked him, why the Oklahoma? He didn't have a first name. His first name was L.P. Grunman. So he said, I heard it was the most non-regulation ship in the 1st Battle Division. So that's how come I went on the Oklahoma. When you graduate from a school, you can request sea duty on any ship of your choice. Well, we both got the Oklahoma, and I was associated with him after he got out and after I got out. And I got paid off in Santa Barbara. The ship was on its way to Seattle, and they pulled in there. They didn't even drop the hook. And I boarded a taxi, which they called by the radio. I boarded a taxi, and my 3 sea bags and went ashore right there. And I was lucky enough to get a job in Los Angeles in a big electrical company, and I worked there for 10 years, and after I was there 2 years, I became a foreman due to my Navy training. And I knew nothing about the Oklahoma Association until my daughter, who we were sending to midwife school in Charleston, South Carolina, she saw a notice in the paper similar to the one that I had here in Joplin, in the Joplin Globe. And she sent me a clipping, and I wrote to Jack Kazarow, and he referred me to Jerry Foreman, who is the incorporator of the Battleship Oklahoma Association. And I have his letter right here somewhere where he accepted me in the association.
Why did you join the Navy as opposed to the Army?
See this little thing? This belonged to my Uncle Jack Rudy. He was a U.S. Navy all during World War I. And he told me, I asked him the same question you just asked me. And you know what he told me?
No.
The kitchen goes right along with you when you're on a ship. When I was a boy, I used to study his Blue Jackets manual, which when I was in, they never had a Blue Jackets manual.
What is a Blue Jackets manual?
It was a Navy book issued by the Navy for every enlistee, and it had all the rules of the Navy, seamanship, everything. I knew quite a lot about the Navy before I joined.
Where did you take your boot camp?
Great Lakes,
Tell me about
Illinois.
Tell me about boot camp.
Well, my first experience with military life was pretty shocking. There were 7 of us joined in Detroit about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And I was the oldest one, and I was 21. So I was in charge of the group. They said, Lyle, you take this group and take them to Great Lakes. We went over on a Pullman at night. Left there at 11:55. Anyway, that's what my computer says. I know that was right. And they gave me so much money. And they said, now, this will buy your cigarettes and your expenses over there, and you're going to have a layover in the morning before you get the electric train up to Great Lakes. And when you go in there, don't let the Marine at the gate take any of this money away from you that you got left over. That's for your first liberty. And believe me, they tried to get it from me, but I didn't turn it over. Anyway, I had a wonderful time there. We went into boot camp, which is really quarantine. And I had worked in the lumber woods in Michigan when I was 15 years old. And I was 6 foot tall when I was 14. And so I had done a lot of rough and tumble fighting, you know, and wrestling. So come right after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, they had a competition in boxing between Great Lakes and Fort Sheridan, which is just down the road a ways from Great Lakes. So they nominated me to go over there for a 3-rounder. And I got soundly beaten. I ran up against a professional, I think. But anyway, I enjoyed my stay there. I'll never forget the lieutenant that sent me to the machinist school. He called me up and he said, Lyle, he said, we got 16 men already. We need 1 more. I'd like to send you, but he said, tell me, how did you get 100% on the mechanical aptitude and you didn't work any of the trigonometry? I said, I'm not a high school graduate. I never had any trig in my life. he says, if I send you down to Hampton Roads, don't let me down. I said, I won't. I'll never forget. His name was Lieutenant Ward, same as that man that he has the picture of here.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that picture of Lieutenant Ward? Well, anyway, he was on the, well, no, that wasn't the commander's name. That was the name of the destroyer that sunk that sub at Pearl Harbor. Well, that was his name, Lieutenant Ward. And I've, ever since, for 50 years, I've been thankful to him.
How did you get 100 on the aptitude score without trigonometry?
Like I said before, I worked in the machine shop at Hudson's for 4 years before I joined the Navy. And the mechanical aptitude is simply matching one picture with another. Does this go with that? There's 100 of those pictures, 50 and 50 here, and you gotta put down the numbers, what goes with that? And I never missed a one.
Huh.
And I guessed at a few of them. I'll admit that. I guessed at a few of them, but I was lucky I got 100 on them.
What did you go aboard the Oklahoma?
I went aboard the Oklahoma, let's see. I left Norfolk see, I come back from Detroit on my leave, graduation leave. It must have been around before Thanksgiving, around Christmas in 1931.
Mm-hmm. And where did you board?
I boarded her in San Pedro, California.
San Pedro. What did you think of the Oklahoma when you first saw her?
I thought, boy, this is some wagon. Yeah.
How big's the Oklahoma? How long?
I don't know the exact length, a little under 600, I say, some 32,000 tons. She had 14-inch guns, I believe 5 forward and 5 aft, and 3-inch aircraft, and I believe she had some 5-inch artillery, 5-inch guns. I worked in the machine shop with 5 other machinists.
Where were your quarters on the ship? Is that?
A division.
Okay, now when you say A division, what's that?
That's auxiliary.
Okay. Would your quarters be on here somewhere, or?
Where's the fantail? Let me see. Well, I can tell you.
Okay.
If you're going towards the bow from the fantail or the stern, you keep on the port side of the ship, on the starboard side of the ship, and you walk along the rail, and the first hatchway you come to, a door going into a compartment, that's Division A.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's the diagram there.
Yeah, here we are. Here's the stern there.
Okay.
All right, you come up the fantail, and when you get right to this bulkhead right there is where we slept, and we went down 2 decks below for mess.
Okay, you say you went along to this door about right here?
The first doorway.
First door.
That's called a bulkhead.
Yeah. Okay.
You go right in there, that's Division A.
Okay, and you were the first deck down? Was that your quarters?
Our quarters was right on the same deck as the fantail. And we had bunks,
Okay,
no hammocks.
Now what deck is the fantail on?
That's the main deck aft.
Okay,
Same like you got the main deck aft, that's the main deck where you're open to the sky. And here's the forward deck, the main deck forward.
Okay, so your quarters was up on top deck?
On the same deck as the 2 main decks.
Okay.
Right.
Describe your quarters.
Well, you just walk in there and there's a little space about 30 inches wide or 40. You walk down there and you got bunks on both sides. You sit there, you get in your bunk, you're assigned to a certain bunk, and if you get on the right side, everybody wants a top or middle or bottom bunk, whatever their preference is. I had a bottom bunk, and I thought it was great until somebody left a porthole open and we run into a tornado or something. And I woke up swimming. But if you wanted, you had a place where you could go down and set up a mess table and play cards. Or I was fortunate because we had a large table in the machine shop made out of steel where we could play acey-deucey or cards or checkers. Or
Where was the machine shop?
Machine shop
Yeah.
was almost amidships.
Gonna hear?
No, not amidships, but right over the engines. Now, let me take a look here.
Okay, that's.
Oh. Where's that picture of the screw? Here it is. Here's the main drive shaft. That's 18 inches in diameter. The machine shop is one deck up from the engines, and the engines are sitting right on the bilge deck. So we had two engines on there, 25,000 horsepower each, one port and one starboard, and they were four-cylinder triple expansion.
Had it been converted to an oil burner or was it still a coal burner at that time?
Oh yeah, there was no coal burners.
Okay. So the machine shop.
There was only one coal burner left, and I came on it, and that was a Chaumont.
Yeah.
I was on it through the Panama Canal and to Haiti and over to Coronado, Nicaragua.
Okay. Now you say the machine shop is forward of the.
The machine shop is up above right here.
Okay.
So it would be, if you went down this hatch, instead of going through that door, you go on down, go down the next hatch, and then go down through a hatch there and into the machine shop.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you walked aft, and you'd be right over the engines.
Mm-hmm.
I had charge every 5th day of all the heating system. Now the heating system on this battleship is 18 hydroelectric thermal tanks. And you have to keep those jobs working when you got the duty. I never had any trouble with them, and I don't think any of the other sailors did either in the machine shop. Most of our trouble was when the compartment would get too warm, especially in the marine detachment, which was down over the screws, right over the propellers. And they were real down low there, and they'd get too hot, and they'd go over to the thermal tank and shut off the exhaust. The tank would fill up with water. And then they'd get cold and call the machine shop, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's getting cold down here, especially if when we were up by the Aleutians or up around Seattle. I finally took a hacksaw and opened it up clear wide and sawed the stem off. So we didn't have any trouble with them closing the valve after that.
Where was your mess hall? Where was your mess hall where you took your meals?
When you go down below the main deck, and you got corridors pretty open, and the mess tables are hanging up on the overhead. And about an hour before mess, whoever's the mess cook for that section, which is usually 50 to 60 men, he gets the tables down and sets them up. They're steel legs with wooden tops. And everybody, unless they're an officer, has to serve mess duty. I put in 90 days in mess number 57. And I think that was the number of it. There was 57 men in it, I remember that. You got to wash all those dishes and get them ready and take them to the scullery to be steamed after the meal. You have to carry the food down from the galley, which is way up high on the ship. You have to carry the food down in these terrains, you know. So, being in the machine shop, I wasn't supposed to get this mess cook deal, but I don't know what happened. I got it anyway. But it was a good experience. I don't regret it. I was lucky in a way. When I first went aboard, I hadn't been aboard too long, maybe a month or two, and I got orders from my superior to go up to the log room. They wanted an observer. They needed one more observer to go over to the Pennsylvania to observe, I think it was anti-aircraft fire. I'm not positive. It might have been some other gun. Anyway, I knew enough about it that I knew these observers were supposed to come from the deck force or gunnery, so I protested. And I said, I don't think this is according to regulations. So they told me to go back to the machine shop. So after a while, my superior, the chief petty officer, told me they got somebody else to take your place from the deck force. Well, being lucky was this, the gun blew up and 5 guys got killed. So I was lucky right there. Another thing I was lucky, I got paid off 7 years before the Japs hit Pearl Harbor. So I'm lucky again. But
What were your duties in the machine shop?
well, I'll never forget the first 3 months I was aboard. I was making condenser head bolts. They got to be made out of Monel metal, which is a high percentage of nickel and never rusts. And I make these great big bolts, turn them down, put a square head on them. You make them out of round stock. Put a square head on them, turn them down to the right size, put the thread on the end, and then make nuts for them in some cases. And most of our work, though, there's thousands and thousands of valves aboard ship. And when you fire force battle practice, you got steam leaks, which we are in charge of in the machine shop. We're in charge of the steam and the lines. You got leaks all over, including the captain's quarters. Due to this, I got pretty friendly with one of the 3 captains I served under.
What was his name?
John D. Cook and, I forget Cook's name, first name, but the second captain I had was John D. Wainwright. Well, where's my fireman's thing? It's got his name on it. Well, anyway, I forget the other captain's name. But well, I had it here in an envelope.
Where were your quarters in this? This is a diagram looking straight down. Where was your quarters? This is the fantail back here.
That's the fantail right
Yeah.
there. Crew's washroom. Come up here. Well, I know that place right there. That's a CPO mess room. Well, that's a CPO pantry.
What's CPO?
Chief Petty Officer.
Okay.
They had their own quarters, separate. If you're a first-class machinist and you can pass the exam for warrant machinist, you can skip Chief Petty Officer, which one of our men did. He was a University of Texas graduate. Our quarters was right up, that's a sick bay there, operating room. Well, it's right here, only probably below that.
Okay, it's below the sick bay. So you're
It's
right
either
about...
below or above it. I don't
Yeah.
know which.
So you're just about midship then, weren't you?
Well, no, I'd say
Well, you're a little aft.
it's between the midships and the stern, about
Yeah.
halfway. These are turrets, I think. Oh, that's the tripod mast.
Yeah.
You know, these tripod masts, you can you can climb right up through them so that nobody can strafe you.
Yeah.
With a machine gun from a plane.
When they put those masts on the ship?
When?
Yeah.
They had the cage mast. Have we got a picture of the Oklahoma with the cage mast? Oh, where?
Well, there's a drawing, but...
That last picture. Here's the tripod mast right here. Here's the last picture of the Oklahoma.
Yeah. That's a tripod mast.
Yeah, but they converted from the cage mast to this. There was no way of getting up to the fighting top. There's a cage mast.
Yeah.
That's a tripod.
When do they go from the cage to the tripod?
I don't know when they converted over. The Oklahoma probably was converted in the 20s, I would say. She was commissioned in 16, and she was with the Royal British Navy in the North Sea in World War I. I was told that. I haven't read it officially. I was told that.
You ever get seasick on the Oklahoma? You ever get seasick on the Oklahoma?
No, I never got seasick, but on my way from Norfolk to Haiti, on the Chaumont transport, I think the Army owned her. Anyway, she had about 600 more people than she was supposed to carry, and we were heading round for, well, we went to the Virgin Islands and dropped off some Brockway trucks, and I think St. Thomas, somewhere down in there. Then we went to Haiti and dropped off a half a dozen Marines and took half a dozen on. And when we went down by Cape Hatteras, in order to find a place to sleep on there, I joined the cruise quarters. I got into the cruise quarters, and they put me to work way down over the screws, chipping paint. And we got in a terrible storm off in Cape Hatteras, and I didn't lose my stomach contents, but I did get awful sick. And that's about as sick as I ever got. I think I was seasick that time.
Tell me, you mentioned cigarettes.
Yeah?
Tell me about those again.
Well, I was a pack-a-day smoker for, I guess, 5-6 years before I joined the Navy. And I was flabbergasted when the first time we went to sea. And they opened up the canteen, and the cigarettes were 60 cents a carton. And, well, I guess about 2 years after that, I quit smoking, and I had 10 cartons in my locker, and I gave them to my buddy in the machine shop. And I didn't smoke again for 10 years. But I appreciate the training I got in the Navy.
What type of food do they fix for the meals on the Oklahoma?
Well, if you'd walk into the freezer compartment down below decks where they have the walk-in freezers, they got tuna fish that big, yay long, stacked up like cordwood. You're not going to run out of tuna fish casserole or whatever. But we had lots of beans, and as I remember right, they put a lot of ketchup in them, it seemed like. But every once in a while we'd have, well, most of the crew called it seagull, but it really was turkey. They were only kidding, you know. They said some people didn't like turkey, I guess. But the food was wonderful. I liked it. The only thing I really didn't like being a farm boy, when I worked on a farm when I was a boy and milked cows and had fresh milk, and then you come with this powdered clim. Not bad for powdered milk, but it didn't suit my taste. And every time you hit port, we had fresh milk. They bring it aboard, and fresh vegetables. And when it's something to look forward to, you know. Yeah, I can eat a lot of beans if I know I'm going to get turkey next week.
Where was your general quarters?
My general quarters?
Yeah. If you'd gone to, when they sound general quarters on the ship.
You mean when they sound general quarters?
Yeah.
My question is, why didn't the commander of the Stark sound general quarters? That's a question. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my station in time of battle, or general quarters alarm, was on the control board that controlled the pumps that pumped the oil and water from one side of the ship to the other. The reason for this is that if they're going to fire a broadside from the port side, you gotta put a lot of fluid over so that your port rail is practically down in the water. I'm not a deckhand or a man that should know this, but I think I'm just giving you my general idea of it. Of course, I was told over the telephone what pump to start, how long to run it, and the officers really were in charge. So all I did was to manipulate valves and start pumps and stop them. And so if you pump, say, till the rail on the left side is way low, say 10 degrees low, and you shoot a broadside from that side, then when the ship keels over, she don't go clear over, you know. And when they fire force practice, she rolls. And you get lots of steam leaks to go fix.
So how do you fix the steam leaks? What do you do?
Well, you might have to shut the steam off to wherever the leak is and then go up there, and you might even have to put a new pipe in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're pretty big pipes and you have to have help. And that was available if you needed it.
How many members in the crew on the Oklahoma?
I don't know exactly how many was aboard. I'd say about, it could probably vary between 1,500 and 2,500, I don't know, or 2,000. Somebody in the deck force would know more about this.
Do you ever see the silver service on the Oklahoma?
No, I haven't. Mm-hmm. No, I haven't.
Because I wonder where it was kept on the ship. Because the captain used it for special occasions.
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm not acquainted with that information.
Tell me about these things you have.
Well, we made, is this camera getting a picture of that?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
We made 60. Have you got it now?
Mm-hmm.
I'll hold this over here.
Okay. Yeah, tell me about it.
We made 60 of these. Well, I'll say they're bronze medal. I think they got a certain amount of bell metal in them. U.S.S. Oklahoma ashtrays for the officers' quarters. Pattern maker made the patterns, and the foundry cast them, and they were pretty rough looking. The machine shop got the job of cleaning them up and getting them in this condition. But each one of the workers got one for their efforts. And at the same time, they cast the Oklahoma Indian bookends. I'll set one this way so you can see it. Or there you got a picture front, and here's a side view. Or set up like this with books between. And this is a picture here of me and my two buddies from the machine shop in Hilo, Hawaii. This is from the Dubuque reunion in 1979. I want to mention this. This is from Lance Townley's scrapbook from the 1936 midshipman cruise. This is the other side. A woman gave me these. I think she was Lance Townley's relation or something, I don't know. In Los Angeles or Long Beach, he gave me those. This is a picture of the Oklahoma going through the. That's not the Meyer Flores locks. That's anyway the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm.
And
Tell me about your lamp.
oh, this little ditty bag here belonged to my uncle. He was in the Navy from 1916. I'll take that off in there. My uncle, Jack Rudy, he was in the Navy during World War I. And this I got from his possessions when he died. This right here is a lamp that most of the men that was able to made these lamps when they were aboard the ship in their spare time. This is a piece of voice tube, and this is a piece of brass turned to look like a shell, and the flange here is often a 3-inch saltwater line. You fill this full of lead, and then this happens to be the front page off in the May the 7th, 1932 Collier's magazine. And then you sink everything except the picture. And the lead squeezes out the end. Now this is two boys boxing, and this guy has drawn back his fist to sock the other guy who is looking at some butterflies. Now here's the guy that's going to get hit. The little doggy here sees the blow coming, and he's got his paw up over his face. So that guy's going to get socked. I had three lights out here, but I took them off and made it like this, and I got one that goes on here now. I made that in 1932. This takes a lot of pecking with a little hammer. And I worked on that, I guess, 8-10 months. Now,
Would you just relate some of the experiences you remember on the Oklahoma? Just some things that happened.
well, I'll tell you a story that I wrote to Dutch Foreman, Jerry Foreman. I was in dry dock in Bremerton on the Oklahoma on 2 different occasions. And the second time I was up there, I had an opportunity to go down underneath the ship and look up at it from the floor of the dry dock. And H.G. Cadell, who was a second-class machinist mate with me on the Oklahoma machine shop, he was with me. And I said, what in the world is that big ding in the port side of the ship? Well, he said, she was coming into Pedro one time in a heavy fog, and she hit the breakwater. And he said, that's why 2 of them chain lockers is welded shut up there, that they're probably full of water. He said, but he said, that's why we have to run the port engine 3 revs faster than the starboard engine to compensate for that ding in there. Otherwise, she wouldn't steer right. So I couldn't hardly believe that. I wrote Dutch about that, and he said he had never heard that before. So maybe it's forgotten along the way.
Where was that ding?
Where's the fantail?
Fantail's back here.
Yeah. Right here, right up here. The chain lockers are right here.
Okay, now what's the chain locker?
The anchor chain.
Okay.
They got to have about 3 or
Yeah.
4 lockers up there for
Right.
the chain to go in.
So the ding is right along in here.
The chain lockers is right up here, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right at the bow.
Yeah. Okay.
This is quite a ding in there.
Yeah. Tell me about the blisters on the ship.
Well, they're about, well, I'd say 3 or 4 feet out from the ship, from the hull of the ship.
Now that's these right here. These.
That's right. Oh, that could be the armor ledge they're showing there.
Yeah. The armor ledge. Okay.
It's about the same width.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
what's that blister for?
When a torpedo hits that blister, it explodes. And all that force goes in between the armor and the blister.
How come it didn't work? How come it didn't work?
Too low. Torpedoes are below it.
Oh, okay.
Torpedoes are set to go below it, below the blister, I guess.
Whenever you heard the Oklahoma had been sunk, what was your reaction?
I lived in San Fernando Valley in Burbank at the time, and I lived right next door to the chief test pilot of Lockheed, Bob Harlow. And my reaction was the same as his. Couldn't believe it. And he was fixing a Stinson 2-seater, putting the last skin on the second wing. And I hollered over at him and told him, it was a Sunday morning, I hollered over and told him, you might as well haul it out of that building and put it out in the back because you're never going to fly it. He says, what's the matter? I said, the Japs just hit Pearl Harbor. About that time, Gladys come out and said, they want you at Lockheed right now. And away he went. He was a wonderful lodestar. He instructed the Brazilian pilots on how to fly the lodestars. And he lives in Houston now.
Have you been to Pearl Harbor?
I've never been there because, this is a good question. Why? I was 6 weeks in Hawaii and never got to Pearl Harbor or Honolulu. We were there during the Macy trial. You can probably look it up about the Macy trial. His wife got violated by some natives and he eliminated some of them. I later had Macy for a junior engineering officer. And he was a very nice man. At least I thought so.
Why didn't you go to Pearl Harbor? Why didn't you go to Pearl Harbor?
The Bureau of Navigation wouldn't let anybody go ashore in Honolulu during this trial because they feared riots or trouble.
Have you been there since World War II?
No. No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
What were some of the major cruises that you went on with the Oklahoma?
I went to Hawaii for 6 weeks, and I went up to Bremerton about 3 or 4 times, and I don't know how many times to Frisco. See, I was married. My wife lived in Los Angeles, and the second-class machinist mate, H.G. Cradell, his girlfriend was in Tacoma. So when we were in Bremerton and Seattle and Puget Sound, I'd stand his watches. And we made our own duty list. That's how we could do this. And when we were in San Pedro or Long Beach, he'd stand my watches and I could get to go ashore more often because it was only about 30 miles from Long Beach and San Pedro up to Highland Park. Actually, that's a little village, a little town in between LA and Pasadena. And, well, I think H.C. Cradell died about 3 years ago, and he is the last one that I know of that I knew.
Could you just tell me what your average day in the Oklahoma was like? Like what time you got up?
Well, in the machine shop, we didn't work no 4 on and 8 off shift. We worked a straight 8 hours a day, same as you do in industry. Unless there was an emergency or something, or if you had the duty, you had to work 24 hours straight. You're on call, you know. I was going back to all the valves. This was part of our duties, refacing the seats and the valve stem that, well, they had thousands of them stacked up for you to work on. And most of this is lathe work. We used to sharpen knives for the butcher shop. We used to sharpen knives and do work for the bakery shop, and you always had something to do. Lots of work. The reason I only went 1 hitch in the Navy is because I talked to a man who had 7 hash marks, 4 years each, all gold, perfect record. He was our master at arms, I think. Yeah. I asked him about it, re-enlisting, and he said, if you can get a job on the outside, he said, if you're not going to make it a career, 1 hitch is enough. So then I got a very good job on the outside, and I put in for a special order discharge, and that's how come they pulled into Santa Barbara and let me off, because I got my orders come through by Mackay radio from the Bureau of Navigation, and I got paid off, so I didn't have to go up to Bremerton.
What was your pay on the Oklahoma?
Well, as an apprentice seaman, your pay is $36 a month, and second class fireman, I forget what that rate was, but anyway, first class was $54 a month, Second class machinist mate was $72 a month. And I was married and living on $36 a month when Franklin D. Roosevelt cut our wages 15% to help the economy. Nowadays, they raise their wages to help the economy. So anyway, I could hardly take that 15% cut off from $36 a month. I had a little money and I loaned money to sailors that didn't have any. And the standard goal for loaning money is 5 for 7 till payday. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to make out. They didn't have no shore leave subsistence stuff in those days.
There was an airplane on the Oklahoma.
2 airplanes.
What were they used for?
Observation. I don't know all their duties, but we had 2 catapults, one on the main deck aft and one up high. I'm not acquainted with the one up high, but I know there was one on the main deck aft.
Yeah, up there.
There's a picture of that in that picture right there.
Yeah, I'd like to
You want to get a picture
Yes.
of that picture?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take a hold of one end of this? Over there. Stay over there. Pull that chair back. Pull the chair back. Get right over there. Oh, give me that end.
Yeah, we got her.
Whoop. This is a picture taken in 1932, I believe, of the crew of the USS Oklahoma. That big drum there is sitting right on the airplane catapult. Yeah. Isn't that another plane up there? Yeah. There's another one right up there. There's the upper catapult right there. So these people are all in a semicircle, about a 180-degree circle. And I'm way down there at that end.
Are you just above the drum? Are you just above the drum?
What did he say about the drum?
Above the drum.
Are you above the drum? Where are you in the photograph?
Well, here, you take this.
It's right in here somewhere.
That's me with the X on my hat. Right there. That's me with the X on my hat. And these are all the captain and the head, man in charge of the Marine detachment and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah. I got her. Is that still going?
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that happened. Of course, all the sailors and everybody knew that the Japanese were spying on us in 1932. We got a new captain aboard and we went out to do some gunnery practice. And one of these Japanese tankers or boats was always around, seemed getting in the way, and we couldn't fire because they were in the way. And this new captain, after a couple of times of this, they sent him a message. If you're not out of the way, the next time we come around on the target, you're going to be it. And puff, 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 their old diesel engine went going, boy. Well, everybody thought at that time in 32 that the Japs were going to get us. But that was a sad thing, Pearl Harbor, that they didn't, that it wasn't prepared. They were prepared, but something went wrong, I think, mostly in Washington. I don't blame Kimmel or Short, either one, although they were partially negligent, I believe. But whoever the officer was that took the message from our first radar that we had and did not follow it up, I blame him more than anything. Anyone. Yeah?
Well, oh, you know, we have one of the anchors on display.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's downtown Oklahoma City.
Good.
One of the anchors off the Oklahoma.
Lest I forget, I want to thank you for coming up here and spending your time with me. And I realize the time for me is getting short, although I'm feeling in pretty good shape. And I do deer hunting. I got my deer the last 2 years. I go to Wyoming to my sisters, and I get sage grouse and rabbits, and I don't do too much big game hunting out there anymore, but this year I'm going to put in for an antelope.
Well, you ought to come to Oklahoma City, and I'll show you the anchor and the silver service off the ship.
Okay. When you go to Neosho, you tell that man, you give him my telephone number,
Okay.
and tell him to come up and see me sometime.
Okay, I will.
You know what his age is?
No, I don't.
Oh,
But I'll have him give you a call.
okay.
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 Thank you.
You see if you can see this woman, because